The release of Star Wars Episode 9 The Rise of Skywalker is now just days away. Normally, this is where hype would be at a fever pitch, and the press surrounding the movie would be all celebratory and filled with confidence. But not this time. This time, the recurring theme in the press coverage surrounding the movie appears to be lowering expectations and bracing for a brutal fan backlash. In this editorial, I will highlight some examples of this extremely defensive posture taken by the movie's expanded marketing campaign, before revealing what I have heard from sources within Lucasfilm about why this is the approach they are taking. Before we begin though, I would ask that if you like the content provided in this video, then leave a like and subscribe, and in the process, make sure to indicate that you want notifications on all videos. If you subscribe to a newspaper or magazine out there in the real world and you fail to read a copy, then they won't cancel your subscription. But YouTube kind of works like that. So I'd also like to ask existing subscribers to check that you're still subscribed and that you also get notifications on all videos. With that out of the way, let's take a deep breath because we're gonna need it, and then dive in. Before we dive into some specific examples of the movie's extended marketing campaign, letting everyone know that shit will hit the fan as soon as the movie is released, let's take a step back to look at the wider context. Episode 9 marks the end of the Skywalker saga. It is the culmination of not just Disney's Star Wars sequel trilogy, but the whole 9-movie saga, the trilogy of trilogies. Retroactively, it has all been leading up to this. In this sense, Avengers Endgame is a fair comparison. It wasn't merely the conclusion to Avengers Infinity War, it was the culmination of the whole Infinity Saga, an epic spanning 22 movies, beginning with the original Iron Man. Yet, the tone of the coverage leading up to the movie's release couldn't have been more different. On that movie, the recurring themes of the news coverage was how Marvel was the biggest entertainment brand in history, how Infinity War was the biggest installment in it, and how Endgame was poised to become even bigger. The coverage was about reminding everyone what had happened in the previous movies to facilitate maximum enjoyment out of Endgame. It was about how overwhelmingly well the bold ending of Infinity War, which could have been seen as controversial, had been universally embraced by fans and audiences worldwide who were crazy excited to see the conclusion. Even the more financially inclined outlets, like Business Insider, was praising Endgame and everything that had been done before to get to that point. No one questioned whether or not fans were toxic. Far from it. The only question on everyone's lips were whether or not Endgame could topple Avatar as the all-time box office champion. That is what the press coverage for a movie that marks the end of an era is supposed to look like when they have the audience's favor and a crowd pleaser on their hands. Now, when we have that in mind, let's consider the press coverage for Rise of Skywalker. The recurring theme in the coverage leading up to the release of Rise of Skywalker is how the audience are primitive knuckle-dragging brutes who don't understand the greatness that has been given to them, and that they're too misogynistic to handle seeing strong, independent women on screen. There is no policing them, no matter what you do. Esquire pointed out that it doesn't matter how good Rise of Skywalker is, because the quote-unquote toxic fans will hate on it anyway. The article correctly points out that fans have issues with the political ideology forced upon the franchise, but then immediately misrepresents them by claiming that their issue is really with the hero no longer being a straight white male. So falling straight back into the fans are racist and misogynist narrative, conveniently ignoring the fact that among these so-called toxic fans, You will find people of all genders and all ethnic backgrounds. Of course, looking too closely into the matters at hand might upset the narrative. So then it's much better to stick to the script and usual talking points, like CNN did. On December 13th, they published another hit piece on the audience, certainly on the more vocal Last Jedi detractors in the fan community. In keeping with being CNN, the article naturally had to bring back the outdated and frankly ridiculous notion that among those stoking the flames were, wait for it, Russian trolls. That's right, Vladimir did it. As if the audience weren't perfectly capable of having issues with The Last Jedi without Russia somehow being behind it. While they drew the line at invoking Russia, the New York Times were also quite happy to call out fans for being racist and misogynist, and therefore determined to hate Rise of Skywalker no matter what. It's just what fans do, isn't it? Attack every franchise, indiscriminately, especially when the end is coming. The Disney-owned ABC helpfully pointed this out to both JJ and everyone else watching.
This is not only the last of the recent trilogy, but the end of the 9-movie cycle.
Yeah.
Do you know what those guys that are behind Game of Thrones had to suffer through? Where everybody said, you can't end it that way.
I know. Well, you know you're not going to please everyone.
Note, that's Disney themselves drawing the Game of Thrones comparison. Then, of course, you have all the backhanded praise heaped upon The Last Jedi, setting up Rian Johnson to take the real blame when the hammer drops.
Obviously read the Force Awakens script, and then I read his script. And what I loved about it was its subversive nature. I loved that it was about shock, it was about surprise, it was about, there was a sort of meta take on the Jedi. It was a very different approach than what I would have done, which is one of the reasons why it was fun to read.
Mm-hmm.
It would appear it's important to them to tacitly point out where the real blame lies. About that, Forbes pointed out that even if it should underperform, it doesn't really matter. Star Wars isn't all that important to Disney anyway. They still got Marvel and a great slate coming in the years to come, with or without Star Wars. Like, what's a $4.05 billion investment? Disney will be fine either way. I'm sure Disney shareholders will appreciate the media telling them that on the eve of Rise of Skywalker opening to the audience. Because what they're doing at this point is bracing for impact. What I have heard from someone with close ties to Lucasfilm, so do take this as an unverified rumor, just like all the other unverified rumors which could not be independently verified, but that nonetheless are about to pan out. That health warning out of the way, what I've heard is that despite all the reshoots, despite all the different cuts they've gone through, despite all the expenses incurred and all the special effects guys driven to the brink of exhaustion in order to get the movie finished on time, the final product is not the crowd pleaser Bob Iger and Disney needed Rise of Skywalker to be. Make no mistake about it, it will be received very well by those who enjoyed The Last Jedi. But The Last Jedi drove audiences away in droves, and this won't bring them back. This is no Avengers Endgame situation. They don't have the audience's favor, and they don't have a crowd pleaser on their hands. They know this, because the very vocal segments of the audience that they needed to win over, YouTubers such as Doomcock, Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, World Class Bullshitters, ourselves, and many more, have, for all intents and purposes, already seen the movie by way of all the rumored story leaks. Not only has the movie practically already been seen and spoiled, it's already been reviewed and utterly trashed. And that's nothing compared to what is to come when the movie really is released, and all the leaks which they could previously claim were made up bullshit are proven to be true. That's when shit will really hit the fan. The Rise of Skywalker will open huge. No one has ever claimed differently. The goodwill for the Star Wars brand is there. No one is worried about that. What has them worried is longevity. What kind of legs will the movie end up having at the box office? Case in point, The Last Jedi opened to 220 million, less than 30 million away from The Force Awakens, record-shattering 247 million opening. But where The Force Awakens had legs, The Last Jedi stumbled and collapsed after the impressive opening. By the end of its run, it had made an incredible $700 million less than The Force Awakens at the worldwide box office. How badly will Rise of Skywalker stumble after its opening weekend? It's currently tracking to open to about 200 million, so down another 20 million from The Last Jedi. Will it be able to exceed the 1.3 billion The Last Jedi was able to gross by the end of its run? If it falls short of even that, then how much could the shortfall be? And what will that mean for the future of Star Wars on film? Disney will be fine either way, this is true, but this is Star Wars. Not only that, it is the final movie in the Skywalker saga. Under normal circumstances, it should be compared with and give Avengers Endgame a run for the top spot. It should not be mentioned in the same breath as Season 8 of Game of Thrones, yet that is where we are. That is what this coverage is all about. Reducing expectations. Bracing for impact. Have the narrative to explain the backlash ready for when the hammer drops. We will keep you up to date on all of this as the story unfolds, and be sure to check back for my review of the movie itself on Wednesday, December 18th. Till then, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.